Teacher union SADTU has urged the Department of Basic Education to prioritise the safety of teachers and learners in the reopening of schools amid the coronavirus outbreak. Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga is expected to make an announcement tonight on measures that the department will take to reopen schools. Now, to discuss this, we're joined via Skype by SADTU Secretariat Officer Xolani Fakude. Mr. Fakude, thank you so very much for joining us here on SABC News.
Thank you, Flo. First, let me greet you and let me greet the viewers as well.
As a teacher union, you have underlined some of the major challenges affecting provinces that you believe would cause issues should schools reopen. Take us through those major challenges that I assume you have then highlighted to the Department of Basic Education.
Thank you, Flo. Well, there's a number of issues that we raised. You would recall that initially, what SADTU raised was the 14 minimum conditions that were saying that the Department of Basic Education must be able to ensure that are met before we can even talk of the reopening of schools. But then as the process has been unfolding, we would now know that we have been getting differential reports even from the provinces, which means that provinces are basically even themselves at various stages or varying stages of readiness. And our main concern about that is that it might then even serve to deepen previous pre-COVID inequalities, which were adamant as a union that it should not be the case. So we have set out very, very clear conditions on the ground. And it is our expectation as well that as the minister will be pronouncing shortly, she will also pronounce on a process that is characterized by consultation, by transparency, and the safety standards of the learners and the educators.
Now, of course, we know that the Minister will be speaking today, and you've touched on some of those issues that you hope to be prioritized. What are your thoughts, firstly, about the fact that you'll remember we were supposed to have this briefing last week, and then there was a sudden postponement by the Minister, and then really what, in terms of what you're anticipating today, and should what you've raised as your concerns not be addressed, what would then be the next step then?
Well, what we will do, Flo, is that we are going to give the Minister of Basic Education the benefit of the doubt. It is unfortunate, rather, that up to this point, we have been having very, very contradictory messages, which have served to also increase into the levels of anxiety of educators, of learners, and of parents as well. So what we are saying, therefore, is that the minister must come out with a very, very clear and a very consultative and collaborative approach. That is our expectation. And we are saying that we are going to give her the benefit of the doubt. What we will emphasize on that we'll continue to monitor the situation on the ground as we approach whatever date that might be at a later stage be agreed upon for the reopening of schools.
You know, Mr. Fakude, before I spoke to you earlier on the show, I had a learner talking to us about, her feelings regarding the possible reopening of schools. And she mentioned something quite interesting. She said that she didn't see why there's a problem with holding back this year, and that perhaps, there should be a sort of, looking at maybe starting the new school year fresh from next year, because she's worried that perhaps her school in particular might not necessarily have the means to protect them from the coronavirus. Judging from what that student said, I wonder, is this sort of where the teacher unions are also, or is that your thinking line as well, in terms of the fact that you would have preferred to hold back this year instead of bringing learners back into that school environment? Where do you stand in that regard?
Well, what we will do, Flo, as a union, is that we are going to continuously monitor the situation. What we will not do at this stage is to make a pronouncement prematurely. That we will not do, because we believe that what should determine when schools should reopen should be the data on the ground, which means this is a very, very empirical evidence, which is also contextualized and, like I said, takes into consideration the very, very serious deep inequalities that are already a main characteristic of our education system. So the learner that you are telling me about is actually correct, Flo. This is, in actual fact, a very serious characteristic of our education system, the inequalities, therefore. So what we are saying is that in a collaborative way, let us continue to monitor the situation. Let us get the data that is accurate on the ground. And then only then we should be in a position to make pronouncements about the opening of the schools. That is our position.
I assume, Mr. Fakude, that your members who are teachers really do care about the education of their learners. What active role are those teachers that are your members, that are members of SADTU taking in terms of, assisting the Department of Education? We can make all these demands. We can say that the Department of Education must do A, B, C, and D for us to go forward. But as people who are given that sort of care of our children, to take care of learners when they're in school, surely they should be taking a bit of an active role. What role are your members taking in order to assist? Because really we should be doing this as a joint effort, shouldn't we?
Well, absolutely. I agree with you, Flo. And I can assure you that as a union, what SADTU has done, and we have even shared this information with the Department of Basic Education, is that our structures on the ground are more than ready to assist with the monitoring and evaluation process. So we are going to utilize this. We've got structures at every part of this country, and we're going to utilize those to make sure that we permanently and consistently monitor the situation on the ground. Because once again, Flo, our concern is that whilst there may have been other learners and educators in more affluent areas that would have even had the opportunity to sort of continue with online learning and other platforms like that, the reality is that the majority of this country's learners and teachers who are in the far-flung rural areas, who are in the township areas, do not necessarily have the same privileges. So what we are doing as a union is that we are going to utilize our structures on the ground to make sure that we assist the department with collecting the correct data, because ours, Flo, is that, and we are insistent on this one, is that the health and safety of our learners, the health and safety of our educators must be the priority. And we are not going to take anything less than that, because again, another fact is that the school is our workplace as educators. The school, it is the learning environment of our learners, and we expect it to be safe. So what we are saying in closing, Flo, is that perhaps the Department of Basic Education must do what it set itself to do. The Minister of Basic Education came on these very same platforms, addressed the nation, and said these are the conditions that we are going to ensure that are met before schools are reopened. And we are therefore saying as a union, let the department do that, and surely we should not be having a crisis, provided our health and safety will not be compromised.
Look, we'll